any plans or any intentions to come out and speak this evening. But I can tell you that there is a somber mood here at the White House. And frankly, a number of officials have a stricken look on their face as they watch all of this unfold, of course, coming just hours after President Trump addressed a crowd of thousands and essentially reiterated those false claims of fraud, tried to pressure his own vice president, Mike Pence, to take actions that he cannot take under the law to block the election results from being counted and from announcing the winner as Joe Biden. And there is a sense that in that speech, the president was riling up his supporters. And now this is what has come from a day and weeks of a lot of energy toward trying to relitigate this election. So, Savannah, I can just tell you the pressure is mounting here on President Trump to do more.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty extraordinary to hear from former officials who were diehards, who worked for the president until those last moments to say it's enough, it's over. What about Vice President Pence? Of course, he was over there at the Capitol presiding over the Senate at this time. And the last best information we had was that he was still there, that it was not safe for him to even go that short distance back to the White House. Have you heard anything about his whereabouts? Any update?
That is the latest that we know, Savannah, that, of course, he, as well as the members of Congress, the senators there, were, of course, evacuated to safer grounds at the Capitol, but that it wasn't safe for them to leave. And I would just underscore a point that Casey has made, which is that there is a determination to try to see these proceedings through to the end once it is safe to go back and try to do the business of the government to count the electoral college votes to declare the winner of the presidential election. And so it is our understanding that that is where he continues to huddle. But it's quite remarkable what we witnessed from the vice president today, Savannah. Once these proceedings got underway, we saw the vice president, one of the president's staunchest allies, break with him really for the first time publicly, and to say that he does not believe that the Constitution gives him the authority to in any way try to block the vote count. And so breaking with the president in that very public plan to proceed and will proceed once these proceedings get underway. And so a really stark, dramatic development there. And it's also worth noting that the Senate's top Republican, Mitch McConnell, also broke with President Trump today and said flatly that there just was not the type of massive, widespread fraud that the president is trying to suggest that there was, and that essentially the country's democracy will head toward a death spiral if elections are litigated and relitigated in this type of manner, Savannah.
All right, Kristen, stand by. Thank you so much. I want to go to Pete Williams. Pete, we are starting to see some more aggressive action on the part of law enforcement to kind of disperse the crowd. We've seen the crowd diminish. What have you learned about the decision making that's gone on in terms of how to respond to this afternoon?
Sure. Well, let me come back to that, if I may, and answer the question about the vice president first. The initial thought was, when this all happened, let's get the vice president out of here. The Secret Service, as I understand it, concluded that there really was no safe way to get him out of the building and away, so he remained there. Now he's staying there because the Senate wants to continue. At least the senators in the House want to keep going tonight, and he has to preside. He is required by the Constitution to preside. So I think the reason he's still there is that at first they didn't know what they were going to do but couldn't get him out of there. Now they want to continue with the count, so he has to stay there to preside over it. So that's the answer to that question. Now, we've gotten a lot of people that have asked us, Savannah, and I'm sure many of our viewers have wondered the same thing. Why aren't the police making arrests? These people went into the Capitol. They violated a number of different federal laws. They damaged property. They trespassed. They disrupted. They did all kinds of things. Why aren't we seeing more arrests? Now, we don't have a definitive answer to the question of whether there was a strategy or a decision made by the Capitol Police or Metro Police, who were initially on the scene, simply not to do that because they felt they were outmanned. I suspect that's it, that they just felt that their main goal was to try to preserve whatever the safety of the members first. But I think the feeling that I've gotten from talking to other law enforcement people watching this is yes, the people in the building were overwhelmed, weren't able to stop and start making arrests. They were severely outnumbered, and that, however, a lot of those people that were there are eventually going to be charged and may not realize this, but there's pictures like that, the one we're looking at right now. There are video cameras inside the building. There are all these pictures that law enforcement will be going over now and trying to identify these people and run them down and arrest them and charge them with a number of different offenses. So I think it looks odd to think that these people are simply being escorted off the grounds. And I've had law enforcement people say, I can't believe what I'm seeing, that they're not being arrested. But what we're told is charges ultimately will be filed on a lot of these people. Now, clearly, it would be a lot better if they could just arrest them on the spot. But I think the feeling was the law enforcement initially was simply outnumbered.
Well, that I think is the real point. What's really disturbing is that they weren't able to be stopped and thwarted. The chief of police in DC said that some of the protesters did use violence against police, but as we've observed as the afternoon has worn on, it is not exactly a surprise that this protest was going on, that there had been talk of this kind of activity. And so, there will be a lot of questions in the coming days about why there wasn't a better response. That's for another day. We're still in a crisis right here. This is the nation's capital on an evening like no other, where protesters were able to breach the security as Congress met in a joint session to perform one of its most sacred constitutional duties, to certify electors, to ensure the peaceful transfer of power to a new president. And instead, what we saw was rioters breach the gates, come through the building, make it onto the Senate floor, the House floor, stroll through Statuary Hall as though they were on a visitor's tour. Congress stopped. The members of Congress evacuated. They're still in a secure location. So as we hit 6 o'clock on the East Coast, there is a curfew going into effect on the streets of Washington, D.C., as law enforcement tries to catch up and get this situation under control. We've heard from the president-elect and we've heard from President Trump. And we now turn to Leon Panetta, who, of course, is the former Defense Secretary under the Obama administration, a former White House Chief of Staff going back to the Clinton administration, and a former congressman who knows that building well. Secretary Panetta, I guess just before we get into the security measures, I just want your gut, how you feel at this hour, seeing the images that we've all been watching.
Savannah,
how you feel?
The scenes that I've seen today are the most disturbing events that I've seen in my entire public life. I never expected to see rioters take over the Capitol of the United States, stop our democracy from functioning, and basically undermine the very form of government that depends on both order and freedom. And to see that happen is something I thought I would never see in my lifetime.
And the business of the Congress must go on. We're told from our reporting from inside the room that senators and members of Congress are very focused, almost defiant in their feeling that they have an obligation to go on and continue this work, even if it goes late into tonight. What do you know about, without giving away anything, what do you know about the plans that would have been in place for something like this? I mean, I talked about it a little bit with Secretary Napolitano earlier in our coverage, saying, I'm sure you had plans on the shelf for an attack on our Congress. You probably didn't imagine that it would come from inside, from Americans, from our very own people.
Well, as you may know, I signed a letter with all 10 of the former living defense secretaries that raised the concern about the possibility that something like this might raise the issue of using the military in order to change the results of an election. And we cautioned against that. But it was clear at the time that there are those that were going to conduct this kind of protest. The president obviously was saying things to incite what we saw today. Everybody knew that, in fact, that something like this was very possible. And I'm a little surprised, very frankly, that sufficient steps were not taken to secure the Capitol and to make sure that something like this did not happen.
And Secretary Panetta, just bring you up to date because the president tweeted about 7 minutes ago, and this is what he said. These are the things and events that happen when a sacred landslide election victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away from great patriots who have been badly and unfairly treated for so long. Go home with love and in peace. Remember this day forever. How does that statement strike you?
It strikes me as not only irresponsible, but undermining the very role that he should be playing as President of the United States, which is to make very clear that this kind of behavior is unacceptable, that it violates every principle of law and order that he said he stands for, and further undermines the very democracy that he has sworn to uphold as President of the United States. What he's saying is not helpful to the law enforcement people that are there now, trying to make sure that they clear the Capitol and allow it to get back to the business of our democracy.
Movie, bro.
It only goes to show that ultimately, as he leaves office, he will bear responsibility for what we saw today.
Secretary Panetta, is this a turning point? I mean, after everything that's transpired and, you know, things that have happened that have never happened before,
Exactly.
and life just seems to go on as usual. But this is different.
Right.
Do you feel that this will be a turning point in which members of Congress, your former colleagues, Republicans and Democrats stand up and say enough is enough? Or is this just going to be just another day in the Trump administration?
Well, I don't think this can be passed off as just another day. What we saw happen to the Capitol of the United States, and what we saw happen in terms of the interruption of our system of government is a serious event. And I worry that if we don't take steps to come together and govern this country, that the scenes we saw today will inspire others to take advantage of the situation. This is a serious moment in our history, and we ought not to just excuse it as just somehow, some kind of protest. A line was crossed today, and that line represents whether or not our democracy is going to function in the future or whether it's going to be held under siege in the future. And the leadership of this country will determine the answer to that question.
And Secretary Panetta, before I let you go, you're the former CIA director, your former Defense Department, the Secretary of Defense. When you think about our adversaries around the world, watching these scenes, what goes through your mind?
It's a terrible message that's going out because our adversaries will see what we have seen today and just sense it as another sign of weakness on the part of the United States. And I worry that because of those scenes, that our adversaries will use that to take advantage of the United States. This is not a good moment in terms of the image of the United States and the values that we represent. It's a moment where we are very vulnerable to those that want to undermine our democracy.
What do you guys feel about the situation? Drop your comments.
I want to turn to our correspondent, Yasmin Absugin, who's on the grounds of the Capitol. And we're seeing in the images on your screen that we are starting to see more law enforcement activity. This curfew in Washington, D.C. has been underway for about 10 minutes now. Yasmin, what changes have you witnessed?
Yeah, so Savannah, we walked east to west. We were on the east side when I was talking to you a little bit earlier, and then we walked all the way to the west side of the Capitol. And there's about 3 to 4 separate police lines in trying to disperse the crowd. If you'd asked me 2 hours ago if by 6 p.m. the thousands of people that were here would have been dispersed, I would not have necessarily believed you. But now 2 hours later at 6 p.m., there's literally almost nobody here at this point. I mean, yeah, you are seeing a lot of folks still out here and still seeing the police presence, as you can see, pushing us back away from the perimeter of the Capitol, but we're already off the Capitol Hill front lawn. And then just a little bit earlier, before you came to me, I saw about 25 or so FBI guys walking into the area. Sorry, we just want to make sure that we get out of the way and we're not getting in the way of any of the police activity to make sure they're able to get their jobs done. Obviously, we want to make sure that's the number one priority here. So I'm stepping away a little bit. But these guys, the DC Metro Police, still pushing folks back, wanting everybody here to heed with the 6 p.m. curfew that's now in place in the city, Savannah. And as I mentioned, the FBI, watch out for the bike behind you, the FBI now on site in front of the Capitol building on a day in which, you know, is usually pro forma during an election season, just 2 weeks away from when President-elect Joe Biden will be inaugurated at this very site. And I just want to mention one other note here, Savannah, that I've mentioned throughout the day, but the Capitol was set up for the inauguration already. When we arrived here earlier today, you saw bleachers on both sides of the Capitol. You saw the inauguration balcony in which President-elect Joe Biden on January 20th will walk out and be sworn in as the next president of the United States. Today, that setup, the area in which they have put in place for that inauguration on January 20th, was filled with rioters and protesters. And it was a sight that I don't think any of us could have imagined that we would see. And again, the police trying to push folks back, make sure that protesters, rioters, folks that are here are behind the line, Savannah. So I'll send it back to you for now. But again, there's definitely some more police presence at this point to make sure that the citizens and the folks in this area are abiding by the 6 p.m. curfew, Savannah.
Yeah, this is very much an unfolding situation. Yasmin, you're brave, and we're grateful for you being there as this law enforcement starts to move in and enforce the 6 o'clock curfew and try to get this situation under control. And as we speak, you look at the United States Capitol on this night, you have members of Congress, senators, and Congress members who are sheltered in place, locked down, unable to leave, unable to perform their constitutional duties because of a throng of protesters turned rioters who breached the grounds of the Capitol and stopped democracy. But if I have Casey Hunt with me, they have not stopped it, they have paused it, because there is very much a feeling on Capitol Hill from our sources in the room, where some senators are gathered in the same room watching this coverage. Some members of Congress gathered together watching this same coverage. There's a feeling, a defiant feeling, that the business of this country will be done, even at nightfall, no matter what it takes. Andrea Mitchell, you are a longtime correspondent in Washington. It goes without saying that there has never been a night like this. What are your sources telling you about what happens next, and whether this sacred duty can be performed by the United States Congress under these circumstances?
Well, I just got a text from Congresswoman Debbie Dingell from Michigan, and you know how long she has been not only in the Hill, but of course before her, her late husband, John Dingell, was the longest serving member of Congress when he retired, and she then replaced him in the House. And she says, this has been a total nightmare. I was on the floor, I hear the gunshots, smell the tear gas, and I will be damned if he will keep us from doing our job. We will go back and do it tonight. I asked, are you doing it tonight? Does it have to be done on the House floor or in the safe location where we know they are together, they are safe? And she says, it will be done on the House floor. And I said, is this reportable, and can I attribute it to you? And she said, yes. So that is the defiance from a member of Congress, notably from Michigan, which of course has seen the protests storming the Capitol there, the State House. She's very close to Governor Whitmer there, and we know the threats there that the governor has endured. And there is a strong Michigan contingent we've been told by law enforcement, to some of the groups who are here today. In any case, the defiance of Debbie Dingell, who has a very good check on the pulse of her fellow Democratic caucus members, is, I think, very, very widespread. We heard this earlier from the senators, according to Pete Williams, who was reporting that they also want to get this done tonight. And I think they're going to try to do it no matter how late they stay up. And as you well know, I covered the Hill. When they have deadlines and they have big business to do at the end of a session, they do stay all night. Healthcare was passed at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, and law enforcement seems to be attempting to clear the deck so that
Exactly.
that can take place. We'll keep an eye on that. Keep working your sources, Andrea. I want to turn to Republican Congressman Markwayne Mullin of Oklahoma, who is still at the Capitol and locked down in his office. Sir, first of all, I'm glad to see that you're okay and you're able to call in. What was your experience today?
Well, first of all, there wasn't any shots that was fired in the House chamber. I know guns were drawn. I was right there when they broke the glass. It did sound like gunshots, and for those that haven't heard it, and which I'm glad a lot of people haven't heard gunshots like that. Unfortunately, I have. I recognized it immediately, and there was definitely tear gas. So the tear gas was in the rotunda. Nothing bias. Listen, it was very tense. It should never happened at all. But our Capitol Police and the Sergeant at Arms, law enforcement did a phenomenal job showing restraint and actually keeping the members safe. These guys have families too, and they did their best to protect us. They were strongly outnumbered, which is why I stood there with them, and we made sure that the chamber was completely clear. The members got out, the staff got out, and at the end of the day, the protesters were completely, and I actually want to use the word agitators. The agitators were completely out of line.
Yeah, and Congressman, I mean, you're a Republican, you're a Trump supporter, and as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, you were someone who was wanting to object to certifying the electors. So we know where you stand politically. This, it seems to me, is a different issue. You're talking about people breaking the law, coming into the United States Congress and stopping the business of America. Do you feel that what the president said today to those protesters in his tweet and in his video message, is it enough, or do you think that he's still in some way fanning the flames by contending that it's a stolen election?
Listen, people are responsible for their own behavior. First and foremost, you can't blame this on the president or anybody else. You're responsible for your own behavior, full stop. And the president told him to go home, and even he said, I love him. And people are trying to criticize him for saying he loved them. But I wake up every single morning and I say, love the people, love the call. And I love these guys too. That doesn't mean I condone what they did. I went and I talked to a whole bunch of law enforcement that they have a triage center set in the basement of one of our office buildings, and if I said there was 25 or 50 of them, I'd probably be underestimating. I shook every one of their hands. I told them thank you. Every one of these guys have families. Every one of these guys, or for the most of them, had families. Most of them were married with kids, and they were shaken up. They were shaken up quite a bit. One young man, unfortunately, is probably going to lose his eye, and because he got hit with some object. And I asked him. I said, what happened? And every one of them told me the same thing. Said these separated from the protesters. These guys had evil in their eyes when they came after us. The rest of the protesters continued on their way. These guys broke away. They were there as agitators. And when they started breaking the glass out, I even confronted them at the door. And I said, guys, because I started yelling, don't shoot. And I hollered at the guys at the other side. I said, you almost got shot. Are you serious? Are you willing to do this? And most of them calmed down a little bit. One of them, he was the agitator. He was the one that was probably the one that got most of them stirred up. Of course, he kept running his mouth, and he's just unreasonable. He's one of the guys you can't be unreasonable or you can't reason with. But we're all, at the end of the day, we have the right to protest, but we don't have the right to destroy public or private property. We don't have the right to go this far. And you should feel strong and be willing to stand your ground for what you believe in. And I believe you have the right to do that. But this is not the America. I've seen this overseas. This is not what we do inside the United States, and this went too far.
That's a fact, Slacker. Something's up.
Tell the story. I
It's
mean, when you think about now, many of your colleagues have said and communicated that they want to see this process go forward. They want the Congress to perform its duty.
Agreed.
As mentioned, you were one who was going to object to the electors. Is there anything about what has transpired today that makes you reassess that not because of perhaps the substance. I mean, whatever your reasons were, those haven't changed, but just because of the tenor and the powder keg that has been unleashed. And, people can lay blame where they want to lay blame. But is there anything about what has transpired that makes you think, you know what, it's time to get on with it? Our position has been known, but this country needs to get on with the peaceful transition.
We're still having the conversation, and I still feel very strongly about our stance. I still believe that there's some real questions about the constitutional authority, about some changes that happened in some of the states. And no question about that. And so there's still going to be some electoral votes that are contested to. We do have to get on with our work, but and the demeanor to which we present the findings may change. We're still discussing that. We're actually having open discussions among all of us, among both sides right now. But we will. No question about that. And so there's still going to be some electoral votes that are contested to. We do have to get on with our work, but and the demeanor to which we present the findings may change. We're still discussing that. We're actually having open discussions among all of us, among both sides right now. But we will move forward the process. And at the end of the day, this is to make sure that we do have fair and balanced elections, that we have elections moving forward. So anytime we have future elections, what separated us from other democracies is people had faith and they believed in their vote and their election, and they were fair. And that belief isn't there. But what happened today, what transpired today, is no excuse for that. There is no excuse for what happened today. Zero. And as I said, there was a lot of peaceful protesters. A lot of them came in from Oklahoma that I knew, and they're all headed home. They weren't part of this. This was a separate group. These were agitators that came there to make as much destruction as possible.
And it's one of those things, because there are you can have politics is all about passion and passion for what you believe. And I always say, if you're not protesting, I mean, that's what America's all about. People fought and died for that right. But when you
that's the First Amendment, that's what it's all about.
Absolutely. But when you fan the flames, sometimes you can unleash an element that isn't responsible, that are rioters and agitators. And I guess that's kind of where I'm asking you, whether you feel that there has been rhetoric that's irresponsible. That
there's been rhetoric.
I think you have the best comment tonight.
You could
follow us on Instagram.
I mean, there's been some really big flames that were flamed, that was fanned before President Trump even got into office. But before he was even sworn into office, there was a lot of it going on. We've seen these protests going on, and it's been bubbling. It hasn't been from our side, and that's why I said I have a hard time believing these are actual true Trump supporters, because you haven't seen this from Trump supporters. Trump supporters have been out there too. They've been on the streets. They've been to rallies. They've had conflict with Antifa and the other groups, and it has never went to this point. This is the first time we've ever seen it go to this point. And as I said before, it doesn't make any difference who's fanning the flames. At the end of the day, we are all responsible for our own actions. And the way you choose to act is you should be held responsible for. And I hope everybody that came in there is held responsible, because a lot of people's lives have changed. There's a lot of law enforcement, a lot of Capitol Police and DC Police and Sergeant of Arms that came to work today that's going to go home a little bit different. There's a young lady that died because she stormed through the door and an officer had to make a split decision and had to shoot her. And guess what? Their families' lives have changed. His life has got changed because the first time you discharge a weapon, it changes you. It changes you, and it changes you forever. Yeah. And unfortunately, there's some people out there that's lost a loved one too, a daughter, a mother. I don't know how old she was, but there's a family that's going to grieve tonight because of what got out of hand, and it should have never ever got to this point. This is a dark day for all of us, and I hope we can all take a deep breath and learn something from this. But we still need to be passionate. You have a right to be passionate about what you believe politically, but we can debate in a better manner than this.
We can. We're better than this. Congressman Mullen, Roger Safe, thank you for your time this evening, sir. Be safe and keep us posted on the plans as Congress tries to get about the business of the American people. And let me turn to Kristen Welker. Kristen, I don't know if we've caught up since since the president issued his last tweet. What was the thinking behind that? What are you hearing from the senior officials inside the White House tonight?
Well, Savannah, the tweet comes after a number of senior officials here have been pushing him to go further than that video statement that he released earlier today when he again reiterated the false claims of voter fraud, but did urge these protesters, the mob that gathered outside the Capitol, to be peaceful, not to engage in any violence. And so this tweet seems to be the opposite of what some of his top officials were urging him to do, which was to come out and make a statement point blank and say, stand down. This tweet does what he did at the rally, which is to reiterate those false claims, saying, remember this day forever. It is worth noting it has now been flagged by Twitter saying that it could incite more violence. So that is the backdrop against which we are seeing that tweet come out. So I would anticipate, Savannah, that you are going to continue behind the scenes here to have a number of his top aides try to push him to say more and, quite frankly, to do more. I can tell you that the world is watching. In fact, we're just seeing a tweet come out from Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister, who says Canadians are deeply disturbed and saddened by the attack on democracy in the United States, our closest ally and neighbor. So people are watching what is happening as it unfolds here, Savannah, and frankly cannot believe what they are seeing unfold in the nation's capital here in the United States. Now, let me just take a step back and give you a sense of the thinking as this day began. I spoke with a number of top officials who said, look, they saw this as the president and his supporters' last stand, what was going to happen inside the halls of Congress, to air that debate and the dispute that they felt needed to be had about the electoral vote count. They wanted to try to convince President Trump that this was, in fact, his last stand. And the hope was that after today, he would be able to move forward. There wasn't a whole lot of optimism that he would essentially abandon his rhetoric, but that supporters would feel as though at least the debate had been had in the halls of Congress. But White House officials acknowledging privately, look, he has lost, and that ultimately he's going to have to acknowledge that. Savannah.
Right, and we just got a statement from Senator Romney that was posted, and let me just read a little part of it. He said, what happened at the U.S. Capitol today was an insurrection incited by the President of the United States.
I think something big
choose to
is going to
continue
happen
to
next.
support his dangerous gambit by objecting to the results of a legitimate democratic
something
election
big's gonna
will
happen next.
forever
What do
be
you
seen
think?
as being complicit in an unprecedented attack
Something
against our
big that we've never
democracy.
seen
The
before is
statement
going to happen
of
next.
Senator Mitt Romney earlier today, and you can just imagine behind closed doors those senators that are sheltering in place together, senators who disagree and have found themselves in this situation. You can imagine the conversations that might be going on there. And Casey Hunt, our Capitol Hill correspondent, the more pressing conversation is what's next? How can they continue this work that was supposed to take place January 6th, the certifying of the electoral vote? Can it continue tonight? Will it continue tonight?
The short answer, Savannah, is that members are determined that it will. The logistics of this are still being finalized because obviously we've never been in this situation before, but this has been the focus of the conversations. There's an expectation that they may be able to get back into the Senate chamber sooner rather than later. There's a push from Republican leadership, Mitch McConnell,
So do you
to
think
do
that
that,
there's
to
a possibility
show
that
they will not be cowed by
this
what
something
happens
big
today
could
by
happen where
people
Trump stays
invading
president?
the U.S. Capitol in what both Mitt Romney and the former President George W. Bush called an insurrection. That's a pretty specific choice of words from those two top Republicans, obviously not supporters of President Trump based on all of this. But there is that determination to make this happen. Now, it's possible it won't actually be on the Senate floor. We obviously are dealing with the security situation there, sweeping all of the nooks and crannies there, all of the people that were in here. It takes time, and obviously no one wants to go into an unsafe situation. So there have been some different discussions of how to make this happen, but I think certainly the people that I am texting with, talking to, are confident they're going to find some way to demonstrate to the American people that the business of the Congress is going to go on, even in spite of all of this.
Casey Hunt, thank you so much. Our coverage continues as we look at Washington, D.C. tonight. On a night like no other, the United States Capitol is locked down. Protesters stormed the building today, stopping the business of Congress at a critical moment, the moment when under the Constitution, resolution there to certify the electoral votes of the election and ensure the peaceful transfer of power.
Today,
we are going to turn over our coverage. NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt just ahead. Stay with NBC as we continue to cover this breaking story.
How the hell did they get into government
buildings?
And this had to be staged, bro.
This is an NBC News special report.
And breaking news tonight, the deadly siege on Congress as an angry
pro-Trump
mob storms the U.S. Capitol. We've seen shocking images of chaos, rioters rushing past barricades and police up the Capitol steps.
And he was like trying to swing his baton, but like, if you do that, you're going to get jumped, you know?
Lawmakers moved to safe locations. The invaders roaming the abandoned Senate floor, one hanging from the balcony, police with guns drawn inside the House. The violence erupting, one woman fatally shot outside the Capitol, improvised explosive devices found, several people injured, offices vandalized, windows smashed. The National Guard called in to quell the unrest, with that city now under
That's what I'm saying. Our people are compassionate, bro.
Just as Republicans launched a last-ditch effort to
Bro,
overturn
our type of people, we're compassionate. We don't go to try to kill somebody first. We're like, yo, let's try to talk it out.
Just after
Relax.
Trump spoke at a rally
If it was the other way
White House,
around, bro,
stoking the crowd by falsely claiming he won the election. Later, in a taped message, the president still baselessly saying the election was stolen, but telling rioters to go home. All of it coming just as Democrats win control.
I've never seen nothing like this.
Historic election in Georgia. A lot to talk about as we continue our rolling coverage. I want to welcome you back to NBC News coverage of the siege at the U.S. Capitol. Right now, police in Washington enforcing a curfew, driving rioters from the streets and Capitol grounds after securing the inside from those pro-Trump intruders who occupied the Capitol for several hours. Officials telling us a short time ago that one person shot inside the Capitol by law enforcement has died. All this taking place as the House and Senate met to formally count the certified electoral ballots that will make Joe Biden the next president. Our Casey Hunt is on Capitol Hill. Casey, bring us up.
Wow, good comment. Somebody said that the shot did not come from the inside of the Capitol. The bullet was fired from the same comrades. Watched the Twitter video many times.
Multiple law enforcement agencies had to be called in after a number of them not only breached the building, but breached the very floor of the House and of the Senate as they were conducting this business of trying to count the Electoral College votes. Normally, a very straightforward process that only takes about a half an hour that would name Joe Biden as president-elect. This, of course, occurring after President Trump held a rally with tens of thousands of people outside of the White House, and the images inside the building were pretty unreal. There were protesters that were on the walls of the Capitol, as well as gunshots at one point.
Exactly, bro. That's why this had to be playing.
Tonight, stunning
Trump
images as rioters supporting President Trump overrun the
You
Capitol.
know, a lot of behind the scenes shit.
On the
Big
floor of the
people
House,
about
officers with
allowing
guns
this to
drawn,
go down
with
because
protesters just
they
outside
probably
the door.
mad too that Biden won or some
Here
shit.
you
You
see
know what I'm saying?
rioters trying to break down a door, and you hear gunshots. Over in the Senate, protesters breaching what's supposed to be the highly secure Senate floor, abruptly stopping the counting of electoral votes. Some taking photos on the Senate dais, others shouting and pushing past officers to get inside. Elsewhere, this man sitting with his feet up behind a desk in Speaker Nancy Pelosi's office. Police placing the Capitol on lockdown.
A riot was declared. It was clear that the crowd was intent on causing harm to our officers by deploying chemical irritants on police.
Members of Congress rushing to take shelter, some wearing gas masks.
We were just told that there has been tear gas in the rotunda, and we've been instructed to each of us get gas masks that are under our seats.
It began just after that massive pro-Trump rally. Tens of thousands gathering near the White House to protest the expected declaration of Joe Biden's Electoral College victory.
There is the American flag, and beneath it, these crowds of people now who have stormed, trying to make their wishes known.
The group then marching to the Capitol, many just standing on the steps outside, others wandering in the rotunda, some staring down the road. At one point, an armed standoff. Police say one person was shot. Democratic Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger describing to us how she got out of the building.
Hundreds of police outside.
floor
and military.
of the House of Representatives.
So how the
It took
fuck
multiple
did this
efforts for
happen
us to be able
today?
to make our way safely,
That's how you know this shit is
and then
staged.
depart the Capitol.
Something's gonna happen
Deeply,
tomorrow.
deeply
Something big's
disturbing
gonna happen.
what we saw at the U.S. Capitol today.
Top House Republican Kevin McCarthy condemning what he was seeing.
This is so un-American. I condemn any of this violence. This is not the American way. This is not protected by the First Amendment. This must stop now.
Multiple Democratic and Republican lawmakers urged President Trump to appear on camera to tell the protesters to leave. Instead, he later tweeted, "I'm asking for everyone at the U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful, no violence. Remember, we are the party of law and order. Respect the law and our great men and women in blue." The president-elect then imploring President Trump to speak.
At their best, the words of a president can inspire. At their worst,
That's what I'm saying.
they can incite. Therefore, I call on President Trump to go on national television now to fulfill his oath and defend the Constitution.
That's a fact, Alfo.
By about 4:15 this afternoon, this message from the White House.
This was a fraudulent election, but we can't play into the hands of these people. We have to have peace.
Yep, they were
So
breaking
go home.
windows and
We love
They
you.
broke windows. They went into.
That
They were
statement not
taking
going
shit. They were
far enough
looting
for
in
many
there.
on
They were
Capitol
taking
Hill
pictures
tonight.
with the cops in there.
That's right.
Yo, the
Lester,
cops
the
didn't even
Republicans
arrest
urging
nobody.
the
There was
president to
cops
go
taking
farther
pictures
in
with
trying
the
to
protesters.
ensure
Don't let that go over
calm,
your head.
calm this situation down and to make it easier to have a peaceful transfer of power to Joe Biden. Lester.
All right, Casey Hunt, thank you. And one of those caught in today's assault was Congressman Mike Gallagher, a Wisconsin Republican. He joins us tonight on the phone. First of all, Congressman, are you someplace safe and well?
You don't think there was somebody on top like Trump, somebody that allowed this to happen for them to lay down and let them take over and do all this shit?
Yeah, I mean, some of the images are stunning, and you saw them firsthand. Can you walk us through what happened? I know the Senate and House had split apart for the purposes of debating some objections. When did you
And they're upset
realize
that
something was
Biden won.
amiss?
Well, it was almost simultaneous with the debate over the certification of Arizona's electors.
But put it this way, you know the wall that Trump built, right?
Foot of the Capitol
In Mexico, they're still building it.
Violence. You know, you heard multiple
That
flashbangs.
the wall that they're trying to build, that right there is a money play because he's connected with the mafias and the construction people. So right there, that'll show you the power that he has to build something that has the people still going to come under with tunnels. They're not going to stop Mexicans from coming over with that wall, bro. So that'll show you right there that he could do power plays like that and line the pockets of his people
and then
that made him rich
president was
and work with all his projects. So I think this right here
and it's my
is definitely
understanding
something's up.
that
Something's
person
gonna happen.
has died. I mean, that is the cost of what has happened today. I mean, someone died in the United States Capitol in America today. I mean, this is unacceptable. And I think, if nothing else, the objectors need to stop playing this dangerous game. We need to reconvene tonight when order is restored. The objectors need to stand down. We need to certify the results of the election. And Donald Trump is ultimately going to have to concede. That's the only way we avoid stuff like this in the future. As a Republican, it bums me out that we lost the presidential election, but such is life. When you lose, you take a second, you look in the mirror, and you figure out how you can do better next time. And that's what we need to do as a party right now.
So, Congressman, it appears they have secured the Capitol now, but that doesn't change the belief in the people we're seeing here that this election was somehow stolen, and the president probably didn't help things today by his remarks. So where does that leave us tomorrow and the next day?
Well, I think the prudent move, once we all say it together that the election's over and we support the peaceful transition of power, it's not dismiss the concerns of election fraud that we've seen in multiple states. I think many states, including my home state, Wisconsin, need their state legislatures to do a version of what Florida did after the 2000 election. There were certainly changes that were made at the last second in the midst of the pandemic, and we've had a massive increase in absentee balloting. And I think it's fair for the legislatures to take a step back and say, here's what worked, here's what didn't work, and here's how we can give our
how they're going to say they're not, they don't know. This is America. They got everybody's phone tapped with the Patriot Act. They have to know that this shit was going down.
To overturn the results of the state election. I mean,
so they had to know
that anywhere in the Constitution. That is a recipe for chaos. It's certainly not a conservative reading of the Constitution. It's a highly progressive one. And I just don't believe the federal government should have that power. That power belongs to the states and to the people.
Congressman Mike Gallagher, we're glad you're well. Thank you for spending a few minutes with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
As you heard, all this happened as Congress was in the middle of certifying. I'm not actually certifying. The votes have been certified, but they were counting the Electoral College vote for President-elect Joe Biden and debating objections to that vote. Let's get more on that from NBC's Kristen Welker.
Just like they're ready to shoot their gun at an instant, and you seen the black cop today getting chased by 100 people. He didn't even shoot his gun.
Madam Speaker, members of Congress.
Vice President Mike Pence presiding over the special session of Congress in which the electoral votes are counted and the winner of the presidential election declared. And for the first time, Pence publicly breaking with the president.
Are you going to overturn the election results today?
Refusing the president's demands that he unlawfully overturn electoral votes for Biden. Pence releasing a letter saying, "My oath to support and defend the Constitution constrains me from claiming unilateral authority to determine which electoral votes should be counted and which should not."
People aren't trying to kill nobody.
Just minutes after President Trump called out Pence multiple times.
Mike Pence is going to have to come through for us
At a massive rally across from the White House.
Well, I hope Mike has the courage to do what he has to do. And I hope he doesn't listen to the rhinos and the stupid people.
And if they didn't know that this was going to happen, then America's not
Pence
safe,
didn't
bro.
have the courage to do
They
what
made
should
so
have
many
been done.
movies about trying to
Today,
rush
again,
the White
pushing
House.
false
And
claims
they have
of
all this
widespread
intel and all that
We
shit.
will never
This is
give
a
up.
ploy.
We will never
and it's
concede.
staged.
It doesn't happen. You don't concede when there's theft involved.
And today, for the first time, the top Senate Republican, Mitch McConnell, blasting the president and those rejecting Joe Biden's electoral college win.
This election were overturned by mere allegations from the losing side. Our democracy would enter a death spiral.
Still, at least 13 Republican senators and dozens of House Republicans were poised to raise objections to the results in at least 6 states, unless a commission is created to audit the election.
What does it say to the nearly half the country that believes this election was rigged if we vote not even to consider the claims of illegality and fraud in this election?
But shortly after the debate began, those protesters started storming in. And shortly after that moment, all the debate ended. They were going alphabetically through the states and never made it past Arizona. Lester.
Kristen, we're hearing that some in the White House are now asking the president to make a more forceful statement. What can you tell us about that?
Well, that's absolutely right, Lester. I can tell you that some top White House staff are urging the president to respond strongly to what transpired today. Now, officials don't know if he's actually going to say anything else or issue a more forceful statement. And some Trump allies outside the White House are frustrated with his reluctance to do so. They had wanted him to go further in his remarks and to say something live, not what he released on tape. But the president is hesitant to aggressively push back against his own supporters.
All right.
Lester.
Kristen Welker at the White House. Thank you. President-elect Joe Biden forcefully condemned today's assault. He called on President Trump to step up and demand an end to the siege. Our Jeff Bennett joins us now. Jeff, what else did Mr. Biden have to say?
Hey, Lester, the president-elect condemned the actions of the rioters as an insurrection, saying their behavior bordered on sedition. He also called out President Trump for inciting the violence, and Biden also talked about the challenges ahead. Take a look.
The work of the moment and the work of the next 4 years must be the restoration of democracy, of decency, honor, respect, the rule of law. Just plain, simple decency.
Now, in recent weeks, we've seen Joe Biden increasingly step into this apparent leadership void, delivering addresses to the nation about the pandemic, about the tough economy, and now this crisis in our democracy. And asked by reporters, Biden said he wasn't concerned about his own safety, his own security, or even his own inauguration, which is set to happen at the U.S. Capitol outside in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, a lot of conversation about that in light of what has happened here. All right, Jeff, thank you. And we noted that curfew now underway in Washington. Police have been working to disperse the rioters from the Capitol and the area. Gabe Gutierrez is on the ground for us there. Gabe, what's the latest? Are people beginning to move along and disperse?
Lester, it's an extremely eerie scene out here, out in front of the Capitol. Earlier, there was all this chaos. Now it is extremely quiet. As we were coming here a short time ago, driving through this area and walking through this area, we heard loudspeakers blaring that a curfew was in effect. A great deal of National Guard members were also here, and they were also on very high alert. Lester, it's incredible to see the Capitol just like this as night falls. The question will be, will there be more protesters that stick around? But at this point, I can tell you, as you can see from the street behind me, people have emptied out. There doesn't appear to be a lot of protesters here remaining. But it was incredible to witness this earlier today. Lester covered an incredible amount of protests over the last few months, past few years, and to see these protesters breach the Capitol. I spoke by phone, and as I was making my way here, to a Republican congressman who was negotiating with some of these rioters inside the Capitol as they were trying to make their way in. He said it was just an incredible sight, un-American, and so many people around the country right now are asking, how could this happen? How could these rioters be allowed to breach the walls of the United States Capitol?
They stormed the Capitol.
Right now,
Trump supporters, pro-Trump supporters stormed the Capitol today. One person was
Thank you very
killed.
much. Let's turn to Republican Congressman Mark Wayne Mullen of Oklahoma. He's on the phone as well. Congressman, thank you for being well.
What do you
I assume
guys
that you're
think about what
someplace now
happened
safe.
today?
Yes, sir. We're all in good standing.
As we noted, the
At
Senate and
this
House have split
time,
apart
what
to
else
begin
can
dealing
happen?
with some of
What
these
do you think?
objections. You yourself have objected.
We thought 2020 was crazy. Now we're
some of the
2021.
state,
It's like, hello, how are you?
certifications. Will that process now end as the approval of the vote resumes?
You know, I think you probably hear a different tone
I just can't
from both
believe
sides. We should be. I mean,
that they were able to do this. How safe really are
everybody is
we?
responsible for their own actions. We can also learn to debate better than this. And at the end of the day, we still have a constitutional authority with the electoral vote for January 6th. And so as soon as the perimeter is secure, I believe we'll be going back to work.
Will you drop your objections?
No, the objection is still there. The to contest the electoral vote is still my constitutional authority, and my obligation. And so to contest it is something I feel very strongly about. It's not political. It's something I feel like is my constitutional authority to do so. And so we will do that, but we can do it in a more civilized manner. And I think that goes for all of us. Listen, a lot of the rhetoric that's been given from both sides over the last 5 years as why everybody is responsible for their own actions. It's bubbled to this point, and this should have never happened. This is a dark day, and this kind of action is not acceptable from anybody. I don't care what your reason is. This is never acceptable.
Do you think your actions, those of others who have challenged these electoral votes, in some way help fuel what played out today?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I don't mean to be disrespectful. That's almost ridiculous because we've heard both sides have real bad rhetoric for 5 years. We've seen protests going on for 5 years. And to be quite honest, we've never seen this from Trump supporters before. They've been out there. They've confronted. They've had interactions with Antifa and other groups before. We've had Trump rallies. We've seen them have rallies before. And we've never seen violence. We've never seen this before, not from Trump supporters. And so I wouldn't even call this really protesters. There was agonizers that went into the protesters. I had the opportunity to go and visit with a lot of our men and women that stood guard, that were putting their life on the line to make sure that members and staff gets to go home safe at some point. And they have families too. And I went down to the triage center, and there may have been 25 or 50 of them, I don't know, but they were bloody and bruised. And one young man, I'm sure, is going to lose his eye. And they were shaken up.
Someone's gonna
And I
lose their
asked
eye
them
as
what
well.
happened, and they said there was a group that broke away from the protesters, and they had evil in their eyes. These weren't just your normal protesters; they had evil in their eyes, and there wasn't just one or two or three of them that said that to me. There was multiple ones that I talked to, but at the end of the day, we are all responsible for our own actions, regardless. We're responsible for our behavior, and I think President Trump did a good job by telling them to go home, and then he even told them that he loved them, and a lot of people want to make a big deal about that. But listen, every morning I wake up and I say, love the people, love the call. I love these people too, but what they did today was inexcusable, and unfortunately, even a young lady lost her life because of it. And there's two lives that changed there. The officer that discharged his weapon. I don't care who you are. The first time you discharge a weapon, it takes a part of you, and there's going to be. And so his life has been changed. And there's some people that love that young lady. I don't know her age, but I know she had to have family, and there's a family that's
Someone
broken
help me
today
understand why he
because
loves
our
these
behavior
protesters
got out of line. And
not the protesters
we are better
that
than that.
have
We don't do
protesting all
that.
these years.
Congressman Malone,
Those
glad
are
you're safe.
thugs.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Those were
sir.
the thugs.
The world is watching as these chaotic scenes play out.
These
A number
aren't
of
thugs,
world
but they're
leaders
breaking
calling
government
on
buildings.
President Trump
And
to
he loves
condemn
them.
the violence. Richard Engel is in London with a global reaction. Richard, it was fascinating to hear some of the things coming from overseas, the kind of things that have come from this country and other times.
Well, by now, Lester, there have been dozens of reactions from world leaders, and they have been condemning what has happened. There have been expressions of shock, expressions of horror, and they are
Why do you
all
guys
saying
think there was a
that
lack of
this
security
was an
detail
attack
there?
on democracy. Here in the UK, Prime Minister Boris Johnson tweeted out that it is now vital that there
They
should
have
be a
no
peaceful
motion
and
sensors.
orderly
Now
transfer
people
of
are going
power.
to be coming down.
Germany's foreign minister said, the
People have
enemies
eye
of
rings
democracy
They
nowadays.
have the
pleased
Patriot Act where they
at
know
these
everybody's
unbearable
close taps,
images.
so they knew this was
The
gonna
leader
happen.
of the
And
Secretary
what I
General
think
of
is
NATO, the
the
world's most
government's
powerful military alliance, said
people on
that
top,
shocking
you guys know
scenes
the
in Washington,
Rothschilds and all
the
those
outcome
people,
of this
the Rockefellers,
democratically elected
I feel like they
democratic
picked who the
election
president is.
must be
When Trump
respected.
came into presidency, he did all
Around the
those
world,
laws where
leaders
he
were
made all these
placing
companies
blame directly
billions of
on
dollars just by
President Trump.
swiping a
The
pen.
Prime Minister of
He
Sweden
allowed people
tweeted
to
out
start
that
polluting back
just
into water
one more.
and all that
President
stuff.
Trump and
So I
many
think
members
he
of
did
Congress
his phase.
have a great
Now Biden's come
responsibility
to do
for
his
what
phase,
is
which is
happening now.
lockdowns
A
and a
spokesman
whole
for
bunch
the
of other
President
shit
of South
that's about to go
Africa
down.
simply
This is a
tweeted,
fucking movie.
"Pray for America."
All right, Richard, thank you. I want to turn now to our Frank Thorpe, who's also at the Capitol. He tweeted some stunning video of intruders rolling free on the Senate
Crazy.
floor today.
This is absolutely
Frank, tell us
crazy.
some
I
of the
feel like
you've
if
seen
I
and
was there
observed.
doing that, I definitely would not be here talking to you guys.
I cannot stress enough what a stunning and surprising and shocking scene it was to walk into the gallery above the Senate floor and see the dozen or so rioters who had made it
Chris
onto the
S.
Senate floor. The
Hell
Senate
yeah,
floor is
I'm
one
with
of the
you.
most historic places that it handles the legislative work for senators, and it is incredibly locked down. Not only is the Capitol locked down, there are multiple levels of security to get into the Capitol every day, but the Senate chamber, the Senate floor, is one of the most sacred rooms in the Capitol, and to see these rioters on the floor was a stunning situation. I have to say, Lester, one of the things that I've been told by aides in the last couple of weeks is that they were worried by the calls by President Trump to have people come to the Capitol and to gather outside the Capitol. They were worried that something like this could happen, and it did. And it's just, I cannot express the unprecedented nature
Wow,
of
that's a good point.
the rioters coming into the Capitol, not having gone through security, and storming the floor like they did.
Yeah, you and I were on the air live when those images first came in of that scene from the Senate, and I think both of us were left speechless for a moment. Quite extraordinary. Frank Thorpe, thank you for your reporting. I want to bring in our political director and moderator of Meet the Press, Chuck Todd. Boy, Chuck, what does this say about a division in America? This thing may be, being put to rest tonight, but the feelings are still very strong, and they are out there.
A couple weeks ago on Meet the Press, Lester, I started off and I just simply asked the question, is this the 1850s or the 1950s, talking about the divides in America? And frankly, I was referring to sort of, the 1950s. We had the Red Scare, you had Joseph McCarthy, but we shut that down, right? We somehow came together and we shut that down as a country. In the 1850s, obviously, the divide in this country culminated in a civil war. And so you now look at an event like today, and making a comparison to the 1850s is suddenly no longer hyperbole, which some of us, I think, were accused of over the last few years. The sad thing about all this, Lester, is that, well, we're all shocked by what we witnessed today. Are we that surprised? We've all been concerned this moment was coming, that we had a president of the United States that was fomenting this, that he had a propaganda machine, frankly, behind him that helped strategic because all of us do think this is gut check time.
So he's looking at it like, how do I come out of the situation on top? How do I read the room? Right? He's a Republican, so he needs Republicans
cannot go unanswered. You've heard various people talk impeachment. You've heard some people bring up the 25th Amendment. I don't think these are ideas that are just being tossed around. These should be serious conversations. Whether, there's a lot of senators right now locked up with Vice President Pence right now. Because you got to ask yourself, is the president mentally fit at this point?
Exactly.
And has the temperament to handle the presidency even for the next 13 days. What he did today and his actions as they continue all night tonight have to call those things into question. So these conversations, I think, are taking place and they're real.
And some of those things you mentioned, obviously very emotional, and many people have called them alarmist weeks ago, perhaps not tonight. Presidential historian Michael Beschloss is with us as well. Michael, there's 2 more weeks left in this presidency. I know you don't have a crystal ball, but what did they say? But where is this going?
They're talking impeachment. Is he
it's going in ways that are very ominous,
Lester. For the next 13 days.
This is a day I hoped I would never live to see. We saw a terrorist attack on the United States Congress and the United States Capitol, and it was instigated by the President of the United States, who today at midday told this big mob, march up Pennsylvania Avenue to the Capitol and take back our country. And stop the counting of the ballots that will lead to an election that he charged was stolen. And once they were with guns and other weapons and committing violence in the Capitol, he made a video in the Rose Garden saying, "We love you and you're very special." We have never seen anything like that in more than 2 centuries of American history. I hope we never do again, but it has to stop. He's in office for 2 more weeks. We can't live with the possibility that this kind of thing will spread and get worse.
We've all seen things today that may make us shudder. Michael, thank you. The question many asking tonight, how did this assault on the Capitol happen? Why wasn't it more secure when Trump supporters have been threatening similar actions for months? Let's go to Tom Costello with that.
For weeks, right-wing online chatter had discussed just this scenario. The president had called for protesters to march on Capitol Hill. Washington's mayor had called out the National Guard to protect the city streets. Every D.C. police officer was on the job.
Today's events were not representation of peaceful protests. Today, what we witnessed was unlawful, riotous behavior.
The question tonight, why weren't Capitol Police prepared for this?
We need to ask questions about why it was or was not designated a national special event and why the security around it was insufficient.
2,300 officers make up the Capitol Police Force. Today, they appeared to be on the defensive, retreating as the crowd pushed forward, forced to pull their guns in the House chamber. But none of the kind of aggressive tactics police used against mostly peaceful protesters last June in front of the White House after the killing of George Floyd.
I would have never anticipated that we would lose control of both the Capitol and the floors. So maybe the first inkling that was different
we can't even
is
go
how
into
hateful
stores without a
and
mask when these people
spiteful
were able to get into
and
the Capitol
violent this
building.
crowd was.
Tonight, Capitol Police and D.C. Police are getting help from neighboring communities, neighboring police departments in Maryland and Virginia, as well as the National Guard in Virginia, D.C. and Maryland. Tonight, it is all hands on deck here in the D.C. area. Lester?
All right, Tom Costello, thanks. NBC's Andrea Mitchell has covered Congress and the White House for many years. I think we all agree we've not seen anything quite like the way this day has played out, Andrea. But I want to raise the question with you that I did with Michael a moment ago, Beschloss, about what the next 2 weeks could bring.
Well, it is so hard to predict. I think there will be censure, some action taken, certainly by the House members. You're seeing tonight one Republican from Washington State, Kathy McMorris Rogers, saying that she will no longer object. She was one of the objectors. I know you talked to the other congressmen who will still object, but they have to rethink how much responsibility they had for what happened today.
And Andrea,
What's false narratives?
You want to know what's the craziest thing that a lot of people don't know? The president can actually pardon himself of crimes if he's in office.
No, so it's iffy, right? So he can pardon himself of crimes. However, right, he hasn't been charged for anything.
Nightly Films is sponsored by Pfizer.
When I read Lexus all the time,
we're told that she was shot in the chest earlier this afternoon inside the Capitol by someone in law enforcement, but we haven't yet heard whether that was U.S. Capitol Police, who are always on the scene, or whether it's someone from the city police department, known here as the Metropolitan Police Department, whether that was who was responsible for firing the shot, nor do we know where inside the Capitol building the shot was fired or why. Whether it was in the process of defending the House of Representatives from the people who were trying to smash their way in or what. But the person was shot, taken, aid was immediately rendered. She was taken to a nearby hospital, and a short time ago, we learned that she has died, and I'm sure we'll get her identity here in a little while.
All right, Pete, thank you so much. Let's go back outside and see what's transpiring there. Yasmin Vasugian, our correspondent on the ground. Yasmin, what are you seeing now?
Yeah, hi, Savannah. So, just listening to you guys talk about this woman who has been shot inside the Capitol halls, and unbelievable to hear that. Nonetheless, we're getting pushed back further and further. As I was talking to Chuck a little bit earlier, the DC Metro Police basically set up a line here, and this is formulaic for them. This is something they learn how to do, right? This is the way that they push
That's true, 990.
When you're saying these people reached a breaking point, who are you referring to?
I was about to say that.
Yo, you got a fucking problem. You're a fucking oath breaker, you piece of shit. Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you. You piece of shit. You broke your oath in the Constitution. Fuck you. Fucking shoving me and shit for no reason. What the fuck?
For no reason.
20K in the chat. Let's go.
I did hear that they're talking impeachment.
Yeah.
They're talking impeachment. You're right. They haven't. Well, I know they think that. I think they drafted one time an article for impeachment. I think one other time, and they did deny it. But they did just report on the news. I don't know if you were here watching. That they're questioning his mental stability. Is he mentally fit to run for the, to hold office for the next 13 days? I don't think it's been morally fit for a while. I don't understand what you're saying. What is drawing the line? Storming the Capitol? What if they have 3 bananas? I think so, yeah. I think some of the Capitol put a lot of people at risk. I don't think you guys are understanding what's going on here. They're going into a building. They're chasing cops. They're taking pictures with cops. I'm just not understanding what the attention that I got is an embarrassment. I feel that this was easily done by the American people. They were able to get into the Capitol with no restraint. BLM burnt down cities. Well, Sean, if you could send a link of any video of a colored person that you have on video setting up the fire, I'll be happy to see it. I haven't seen that. And yeah, well, everyone's responsible for their own actions, so, everyone has to take accountability. I'm not sure, what that has anything to do with the American people storming the Capitol today. Keep it on topic. I think those countries don't have a stable government, but we as in America do. We're talking about two total different countries. One is a very strong government, one is not. What history are you preserving today?
And if everybody wants to introduce themselves and let people know, so everybody can network.
Yeah, people be saying some weird shit.
I know. Whatever happened today is proof that something big gonna happen that we've never seen before. And there's a shot call from the top to let this happen.
What are they tired of? Help me understand what them storming the Capitol is going to do moving forward for them that's going to better their livelihood.
They basically beat it.
Damn.
Go ahead and just
And I feel like, like I said earlier,
It's Jeremy, actually. My real name is Jeremy. This is this is what I show everybody, but my real name is Jeremy.
A lot of people to start breathing back into the water and all that stuff. And now, Biden's saying for lockdowns and vaccinations.
Hey Sean, I asked for a link. Send a link. I didn't see any person of color burning down anything. But what are they grieving and angry about? You're not explaining very thoroughly here. They ran up on a government building and nothing happened to them. One person was shot. One person. You tell me how many people have been killed and shot and run over at the BLM protest. You tell me what these people are grieving and angry about. I'm confused.
I argued with Lupe Fiasco on live. It's on my YouTube channel, and he was saying, the alkaline bags of myth to take the fucking vaccine. So I was wilding out on this shit, and he was saying Dr. Sebi, shitting on him and all that. And he basically saying the reason he's saying that is because he knows that people aren't, they're eating sweets, they're not eating healthy diets, so that's why he's telling them to take the vaccine, because people are losing.
Yes, they were more violent, right? Because cops and civilians were able to run people over who were part of the BLM movement. So they were violent, not on the part of the people who were protesting in the BLM movement, but the people who were against the BLM movement. Those were the violent people. How are they more compliant and more peaceful? They broke windows into a government building. I don't even know what you're saying. Either way, not justified. They broke. This is kind of breaking and entering, don't you think? They broke windows to get into the Capitol building, and you're here, like sitting back like they did nothing wrong. It don't matter what side you're going for. It's that they broke into a government building, and you're here saying that BLM riots were more violent. And I've asked for clips or links of a colored person in the BLM movement setting something up on fire, and I have yet to see it. I don't see no links in this chat. All I see is you just talking. He's saying he sent links. Where the link? I don't see no link here. All he's saying is that. No. He's saying he's sending links of colored people putting stuff on fire.
Oh, they probably don't let, they screen the chat. They don't let you post stuff like that.
But again, I'm not
The fact that you keep comparing and bringing other things into what's actually happening right now is baffling.
I feel like back in the day, we used to live for hundreds of years, maybe thousands. They wanted to control that, so it's not vaccinated. So as soon as you're born, vaccine before, clinics past 75 years old.
There's statues being torn down in every state, and so what does that mean? You're just talking about Oregon. It's happening everywhere.
And Bill Gates,
it sounds like you condone to this behavior.
He's saying, we need a popular beyond meats and all this shit. They're doomed, bro. They got Biden in there saying he's about to do he said anything to get elected. I don't trust none of this shit.
What is this doing? For real. What is this doing? What is them running the Capitol, running into the Capitol, breaking windows, a person getting shot and killed, them running after cops, them taking pictures of cops? What is that doing? Moving forward from these events today, what is that going to do tomorrow? What positivity is this going to bring? What is this going to change? Because you're over here talking about other stuff and you're not focusing on what's actually happening today. Your brain, stay on topic here.
Let's go.
Donald Trump is saying, you know what they call sanctuary cities. Donald Trump was saying before this came out.
Okay, so the difference is they didn't run up on a government building. So now look at this. This is a government building and nobody's getting shot at. Nobody's getting tasered. There's no tear gas. There's nothing going on for how long? What are you saying? You're not understanding. There's a huge difference in what you're bringing up to what's going on right now.
You know he was Grammy. Let's all agree.
Yes, they did what? You're watching footage right now. How long did it take for anything to happen to these people? Tell me. You're watching this shit.
Bro, this shit is a movie. Look what happened today.
Troll. The same profile picture with a different name. Come on. Come on. Come on.
We're getting forced out here about
This is hilarious. You watch live all day. Look at this. We're watching this. These are recordings from earlier today. You see nothing here. Homie, look at this. They're chilling. They're taking pictures.
No cap, my nigga. He's like,
what are you
all
talking?
my connect. He got the fucking wall in Mexico, which is a fucking money grab for all his fucking construction and mafia people, my nigga. They can't stop the fucking Mexicans from coming through with that shit. They're gonna go underground, above ground. It don't fucking matter. That wall's a money grab and a ploy. So imagine what the fuck he's gonna do next.
This was crazy.
Watch what he's gonna do next, my nigga.
So vandalize and breaking and entering, I think, are two different things, right? Because right here they're breaking and entering into the government building, and you're still here trying to talk about something else, yo. Watch what's going on here. Speak about what's going on right now, and you tell me that you think this is okay.
The Dr. Dre shit is a Illuminati shit too, my nigga. The album and Snoop Dogg beef, my nigga. Come on, my nigga.
They did break in, okay, and you're okay with that.
Snoop Dogg versus Eminem. Dr. Dre catches the aneurysm, then Eminem drops the album today, my nigga. Come on. Yesterday, and Eminem drops the album today, and Snoop Dogg and Eminem beefing. Eminem dropped a diss track called Zeus.
How many people did they put at risk in this building now? Definitely worse. They went into the government building. They're both equally as bad. Okay, so I'm glad that you said that they're both equally as bad, because so then why did President Trump say that BLM movement are rioters and protesters and thugs, but these people today he loves them and they're good people? What are you saying right now?
That's some really mysterious shit.
Follow 730 already on Clubhouse. On Clubhouse.
I can't see the chat anymore.
Illuminati.
This is an embarrassment.
She wants $2 million a month.
We can't go into a store without a mask, but look at these people. They were able to get into a government building, no problem. And they're chilling there.
Come on.
Steven is my name.
Yeah, Snoop Dogg versus Eminem. Eminem dropped a diss on him called Zeus. Nobody who has an aneurysm fucking texts the same day, my nigga. I'm telling you, it's a fucking ploy.
I know, but you didn't even say what breaking point they reached. Like, what breaking point did they have to go through to get to this right here? I don't understand. I'm still waiting.
They about to Michael Jackson his ass, or this is an Illuminati shit for Eminem's album, or Snoop Dogg?
We're on Clubhouse. We're on Clubhouse.
This is just the beginning. I'm trying. The door is fucking.
If you're going to stay without a mask, you know, I hope that you never have to catch anything or anything like that.
And his wife does look kind of like buff and shit, just like on steroids, just like him. She might have uppercutted his ass.
We have a few trolls tonight, but it's alright.
She wants $2 million a month.
Hey, I'm inside the building, dude. In the kitchen. Where are you?
She had a heart attack going.
I'm trying, bro. You tell them. Tell them and let other people get out. Tell them in front of me. Yeah, he's good. I'm literally
Listen,
trying to go.
Eminem just dropped a 82-song album today. This Snoop Dogg the other day. And Snoop Dogg versus Eminem is a beef that's happening right now. Because Snoop Dogg said that he could live without Eminem's music. I investigated this shit. We went as far as back as
You haven't tried to explain anything, but thanks for coming.
Snoop Dogg asked Eminem to be a feature, and Eminem said no. So the beef's been since back then. Then, you know, Snoop Dogg was Dr. Dre's man. Then Eminem comes and takes the shine. So it's a lot of shit going back and forth. Nori, Joe Budden, and all the niggas was talking about that for yesterday on Clubhouse. And I feel this.
There's nothing to process. You just keep saying these people are tired and they reach a breaking point. I keep asking you, you know, hello, what was the breaking point? And you're just telling me the same shit. So,
and they got arrested.
Exit left, homie.
Some niggas. Donald Trump ran down on his ass. They're trying to get that Dre Beats. The Dre Beats caused the aneurysm, you heard? Those new beats by Dre's nigga with the 5G wireless. No, I'm just playing. That shit caused the aneurysm. Follow on Clubhouse before you get smacked up, you heard?
We're on Clubhouse at the same time. Sorry, guys. Multitasking.
Nah, he did. Because she's asking for $2 million a month, and I think the judge said she shouldn't get that shit. And I like that. Supposed to give him a left hook, my nigga. She's a billionaire. So she wants. She said she's a customer. She said she's a customer. Exactly, because the judge wasn't with it though. Dr. Dre got pulled, my nigga. He picked the judge and all that. This nigga got Jimmy Iovine connected with all the Jews, my nigga.
Hopefully these people don't spread the virus even more than what it is already. I don't see a lot of people wearing masks. These people are gonna go home and go talk to whoever they're gonna talk to. They're gonna go. It's gonna be a domino effect.
His lawyer came crip walking.
They did pull an officer into the crowd. They almost beat the officer. They stopped him though, but they got a couple officers in the crowd. Made them leave.
Donald Trump's house? Oh, hell no.
If y'all got YouTube channels and shit, I don't know if you ever seen somebody music video pop up as an ad when you watch YouTube. That's what they say my company does. We network with a lot of artists and shit. In the game, network with yeah, that's a fact. No doubt. There's network, there's these monies. No doubt, bro. Somebody's on the network and make money.
Get a minute. Take the jacket off.
I'm Puerto Rican and Dominican. That's a fact. There's a war going on outside. This shit's a setup. I think we're gonna see something we've never seen before. Trump wants it
much more substantial weaponry. They all had helmets and riot shields.
He said his goons today.
And they marched up in formation sort of across the grounds here through the protesters. And then it's unclear what happened. They may have taken up a position somewhere else, but the protesters have not yet been moved. So they remain here in force, basically having their run of the place. I mean, if you look around you right now, there's protesters milling about in the front. They're up and down the stairs. They've completely taken over the front stairwell here as well. And we should mention, we're sort of keeping our distance here a little bit because protesters continue to do everything they can to try to disrupt a lot of the reporting. There's a lot of profanity being yelled, some profane signs being waved around. So we're trying to be a little careful, but we're showing people.
So that shit's a money grab for all his people.
But this is very much still the
helped
scene
him out
here. It's
throughout the
unclear
years.
if that message
They
of the
send all those
curfew has gotten
construction
out to people
companies out
because
there.
there seems to be no
and they
signs
fucking
of
just
anyone
getting free bread,
dissipating.
you feel me?
It
So
does
what
seem to be, though, that the longer people stay out here,
send this hit today.
and nothing seems to be changing in terms of what they wanted to see happen today, people are increasingly getting frustrated. So you're seeing a few more angry people, a lot more yelling.
Somebody already jumped over it when they were building
we were
it.
able to talk to a few of the people
They seen them and they didn't even stop
on
them.
different sides of the Capitol, and they shared that there was some debate among
Homie
the
ran with
protest
the
crowd
pack
about
and
whether
everything.
or
He had
not to
10
try to
bricks
break
on his
in.
head.
Here
Some
we
people
go.
were saying, no,
What a
we should stay back and be
sacrifice.
peaceful. There was a smaller contingent, we were told by a few protesters, who said, no, we have to get in. And as Lisa was reporting, we're using whatever they had in their hands to try to break through the barrier. Another piece of information I want to share, and we only have this from one protester who said he was part of the group that was able to breach the doors and get inside the Capitol.
Exactly.
He said that those protesters
That's the fucking great. That's the wall that they're building with it.
He couldn't provide many more details. He didn't know the person who was shot. He identified her as a young woman. That is a single protester sharing his account of what he saw with us. And that's all we can share at the moment
Bro,
on
they
that.
washing money.
But he
They
also
gotta
said
do that
he was
shit. They
able to
washing
get
money.
in with the rest of the crowd he was with. I asked him how many people. He said about 500 people. That is his account right now. Were able to get in. I asked him where he went. And he said, I went everywhere. Never been inside, so I wandered around. I said, did you see any police? He said, just a few. And then I asked him why he left, and he said, well, we got bored, and there was nothing else to do, so we came back outside. And he was one of the few who's now milling around with the rest of the protesters. So that's not something that you would expect to hear from someone who was able to come here, breach the entry to the Capitol, wander about at will, and then leave. But of course, as we know anything else about this very disturbing report about one person being shot, we will continue to share that with you. Right now, we're in a standoff. We're waiting to see what happens next. As I mentioned, there's additional forces now arriving, but the protesters showing no signs of moving. Katie?
It's crazy, right?
Yes, it
What
is.
happened today?
It is such a disturbing
crazy,
scene.
but you
And
know
then
what?
Anna, you see.
I'm feeding into the stupid comments because you put that stupid comment, those comments. So these people are like, do you think it's a satanic sacrifice? No, stupid ass comments. Keep that shit on. Hell, motherfucking no. No, hell, motherfucking no. That's stupid shit.
Are you shitting me? That's crazy. So what was that? What was that about?
USA.
That's how they want to get. They want to take down the immune system. Oh, and I heard they really gotta to really know if the shit really works and is good for you. It's supposed to be like a 10-year trial, bro, not in a 1-year trial. Bro, this shit was patented. COVID was patented before it even came out. You can find it. You can find the COVID vaccine was given to dogs, my nigga. COVID-19.
Had to shut down.
Exactly.
What's up, everybody? Steven.
And Bill Gates is the one that
Welcome.
do something
Welcome
big.
to history.
Like a fucking idea of Windows and shit, and
Please subscribe to my
fucking
channel.
tell you,
I
and
do
taking
streams
you
almost
to
every
fucking
day.
rule the world and shit, the country and shit.
We ain't here for all that bullshit.
Okay? We're not having it anymore. And the media is hiding the truth from us. Come here, you have Facebook taking off your posts. Come Twitter and Google taking off your posts. I have
There has to be one dude who doesn't give a fuck. Just like the white dudes that went in there today, all the niggas, they don't give a fuck. Like, cause you got like, that's why I know it was set up in something crazy happened. Cause they went in there knowing that there wasn't gonna get killed. You feel me? But because he's one of us, my nigga, we don't try to kill niggas for no reason. This is not worth killing a nigga for. If it was a white dude and black niggas running at him, he's clapping. Us, we're like, yo, he's trying to collect his pension and go home tonight. Bro, when the deal.
What's going on?
Yo, when the BLM was there was hundreds of fucking military outside. And niggas are saying that we didn't know this was gonna happen today. So what about the Patriot Act? You got all these people announcing it on fucking social media. This is a fucking, it's a lie, man. Watch what's about to happen. Watch it.
So there's a lot of mayhem happening as we speak. Everybody's around here. This is what I see in circles as we speak right now.
Yeah, he was shaking his fucking candy about the gas.
For what?
I told you, Lieutenant. I told you, fucking Lieutenant.
And visit freedomscoop.com and subscribe to my channel. I love you all.
I'm at the U.S. Capitol with patriots from all over the country. This is the front door of the U.S. Capitol. Normally, the police would prevent me from getting on the grounds this far, but now that there are thousands of Trump people, it's quite okay to be here at the U.S. Capitol. So I'm enjoying this moment of freedom.
A surprise to me, but you know, a thing like that should happen today, that means that anything can happen to our country. So I know it was allowed and it was pre-planned.
This is what your Democrats, this is
It's
what
pre-planned shit, a staged event. This might be the first time we see a motherfucker not give up the presidency or some gangster shit.
They are the ones who created this fucking fiasco of a government and the treason of them stealing our money, our children's money, our grandchildren's money, and at this point, with $2.2 trillion and $26 trillion in debt, our great-great-great-grandchildren's money. They don't have a plan to take care of
the fucking
So Ira,
yeah, state of emergency, 15 days.
I love it. I'm gonna get my popcorn.
Yeah, well, it's cool, like, if I wasn't down the street, but I'm like 2 miles away from the Capitol. So, yeah, I'm gonna go and spend some time with my family in Atlanta and then head out west to Texas, hang out with some friends. But that's all I got to say, y'all.
We all gonna have to hide in Texas when this all said done in Texas. I mean, I'm an elected official out here in Texas, so.
Yeah, I'm on my way. I'm gonna go to Dallas and then we're driving down to Houston and go and see my homegirl. She's a pharmacist out there.
Shout out to my homie Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Where you an elected official at, bro? Over here in South 6, Fort Worth, man. I'm in the hood. I represent where I'm from. I literally left, got my degree with the Indian for a little bit, and then I was like, all right, it's time to come back home, especially like when the Jackie Craig incident happened. I was like, oh, fuck, I ain't doing that shit. So I came, I ran for office, and I won. Now they want me to run for city council, and now I'm a candidate for city council. But right now I'm elected chair. We appreciate your efforts, bro. We appreciate you.
We don't want you.
Sir.
We don't need you, man. Okay, I need you. Can't have it both ways. Back up. Back up. Back up. Back up. Can't have it both ways. You got some priorities. Back up.
Like, where are you trying to stop the substitute? What is wrong with you? Where are you talking about?
Everybody, we're gonna take these fucking traitors down. Do you guys understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, because you're in like a weird section where the flag is out there and everything, right?
Make a hole! Make a hole! Make a hole! Make a hole! Make a hole!
You know, like those type of structures, but then you got park police that's in charge of like national parks and all that stuff.
I know. But it's not your position here.
Why is this? Did you see when they came out? Oh, I think I was in there though. I was in there for over an hour. Yeah.
You think so?
Yeah.
You think it wasn't? You don't think it was staged?
Oh, okay.
These cops are gonna come out. Make the hole, everybody. Make the hole. Everyone better be inside this motherfucking building.
Yeah, it was intense in there. Chaos. I mean, it wasn't terrible, but it was. Cops were working with. Yeah, I don't know, man. It was. I think you get in the chamber. There's no service, so I didn't go in the chamber. But people went upstairs. Cops had their guns drawn upstairs. A couple cops were working with a couple of the Oath Keepers. It wasn't like just like one or two sides. It's chaos, man. There was tear gas. They're shooting paint like us, pepper bullets and shit. What? I don't know because I never went into the big room. As soon as it happened, it took my stream down, so I just stayed out. But I mean, people kept pouring out. At least like a couple hundred people got into the main chamber or whatever. Yeah.
So you're telling me the government knows if you're flipping a brick, but they don't know that thousands of people is coming with the Patriot Act where they can tap everybody's phones and videos on Twitter and all that, saying that they're going to come do this. You don't think? I believe that this was fucking set up. Something big's going to happen because this shit has never happened before. Yeah, but nobody ever got in the inside and hijacked that shit, ran police down and everything.
They broke the glass? Oh my God.
Mind your own business. Put the knife away! Are you crazy? Put the knife away, please! Crazy bitch! You're crazy bitch! Someone take the crazy bitch down! Someone! You got a lot of people here in the
Yo, bro, if it was black people, they would have fucking, even if we had the ups on them and it was black people, they still would have called motherfuckers that come 15 minutes later, the whole fucking military stuff doing shit.
Yo.
That's what I'm saying, bro. Trump gave niggas the green light.
Poor Marcos Fort, Marcos Fort. He's never gonna make it. He's done.
He just got paid his good money. He got 50.
Yeah.
I know, but he just got a big deal. So, this is another. This happens all the time. They be paying paid and they hurt and lose their money. Because he's getting paid no matter what.
I mean, it's good that he's getting paid at a time, but his career can never take off because he's always getting hurt.
Yeah. Same.
But they were local photography videographer, and they was looking, you could just see like there's this one they might have they're never, like he said, like El said, like they got a gravy job. They don't do shit. You know what I mean? But, you know, they got weapons should any threat comes. Like I heard I had to go to a ANC meeting because I was an event manager for a 10,000 person event at Freedom Parkway down in the city. And I was at an ANC meeting and they were talking about how the park police had to kill somebody because they were acting crazy in front of one of the government buildings. So don't get it twisted. Yeah, they were told to stand down. You can see one of the videos.
Exactly. Bro, they were taking pictures. Those people who broke in and broke glass, and this was not a peaceful protest. They broke in there. They were taking pictures with the cops inside, and the cops were posing with them. Do you think Donald Trump? Do you think something could happen when Donald Trump stays in office, even though he lost?
Absolutely.
I think Ricky said something happened like this in the past with another president. I think Ricky brought up something that happened one time in the past. The president didn't want to fucking leave or something. Andrew Woodson or something.
National Guard's forming up behind us. We're probably going to move here. Yeah, National Guard's coming in. Yeah, dude, the service is fucking.
Get something you want. And that, to be honest with you,
But that shit happened. That shit happened with Trump too and Hillary, because Hillary won, but then Trump won the fucking electoral or something.
He didn't even win the popular vote either time.
Hillary won.
But he didn't win it this time either. He didn't win the popular vote either.
Oh shit. That's what I'm saying. The fucking Rothschilds and the Rockefellers pick who the president is regardless. You know what I mean? You know who fucking wins.
Theoretics of it, they want to vote for whoever the president, vice president is, but they don't have to vote for, you know what I'm saying? They don't have to vote for whatever state won the like whoever the voter that won for the popular vote, they don't have to vote for that person at all.
and like you said, that did happen too with Trump.
Yeah, like
and they find
Hillary, they did that.
They find the delegate too. I think they find
just,
the delegate like $2,000 for doing that, but you know that's like pocket change to them.
Right, but I mean, it's literally they can do that.
Nah, we'll go blue. You're right, they can do that, and then we'll see that state go from red to blue because the electoral college chose that way. So, like, you're right on that part. I give you all that part.
Hey, what kind of ride week y'all expecting with Biden coming in office? I just have all kind of bad vibes.
It's funny we're here and all I can think about it is if I got a parking ticket.
This is what I feel, right? That a lot of times everybody they pick for the president no matter who votes for what, right? So with Trump, they needed him to go in there to do these laws. He took out Obama's laws and shit like that and made it where they got to pass 2 laws to get rid of that law. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? So he with a swipe of a pen, all these businesses made billions of dollars in one fucking day just from some shit that he's saying that. And then he allowed Trump against the pollution of water and because he don't believe in global warming and shit. So he needed that to happen, right? So the next thing is about to happen. So all these niggas got rich. For this next stage, because they knew it was going to happen, is going to be Biden, lockdown, and Kamala Harris fucking arresting. It's going to be lockdown and vaccines.
Just plain,
this stage.
simple decency.
That's it, man.
Renewal of politics. It's about solving problems, looking out for one another, not stoking the flames of hate and chaos. As I said, America's about honor, decency, respect,
Here's a question.
That's who we are.
Think about it. Do y'all
That's
think
who we've always been.
us normal folks get
The certification, the electoral college vote, is supposed to be a sacred ritual.
They design it based off if you got melanin in your skin, this is gonna fucking you're gonna die before 75 type shit.
But today's reminder, a painful one.
Anybody else got anything on that?
Democracy is fragile.
And
to preserve it requires people of goodwill, leaders, the courage to stand up,
that can make
who are devoted not to the pursuit of power,
like you don't choose what you want to eat. The government
for the personal interest pursuits of their own self-interest.
But people used to live for hundreds of years and thousands of years
common good
until they started vaccinating people. Then you only live to fucking 80
we put
years
our
old.
children watching television.
Motherfuckers is living to 80 years old.
Think what the rest of the world is looking at.
Sugar in their tea.
For nearly 2.5 centuries,
they fry everything.
we the people,
eat right.
in search of a more perfect union.
So the government is Walt. So the government is Walt Disney World. The government's Walt Disney World, and they're looking out for our best interests.
No, the government ain't looking for our best interest. I'm not
watching the scenes from the Capitol.
We don't even take care of our own fucking
I was reminded as I prepared other speeches in the past, reminded the words of Abraham Lincoln
is the poison.
in his annual message to Congress. His work has today been interrupted by chaos.
We starting to wake
Here's
up.
what Lincoln said.
Collective. I can't speak for every individual.
He said, "We shall nobly save or merely lose the last best hope on earth."
Right now, I'm in Memphis,
Went on to say,
and
the way
when
is
I come home to
plain,
see the family for the holidays, and shit
peaceful,
like that, I always stop at the gas
generous,
station and get
just, a way which, if followed, the world will forever applaud and God must forever bless. The way is plain here too. That's who we are. It's the way of democracy, of respect, of decency, of honor, and commitment as patriots to this nation.
Bro, that's just like the
Notwithstanding
Chinese
what I
spot.
saw
One time
today,
I
and we're
don't
seeing
even fucking
today,
Chinese food no more.
I remain
The fucking
optimistic
guy was
about
like,
the incredible opportunities.
He was like, "Why don't you eat this?"
There's
stuff?" or
never
whatever somebody
been
said. He's
anything
like,
we can't do.
That's for you guys. That's for you
When
guys.
we do it together. In this God-awful display today, It's bringing home to every Republican and Democrat and Independent in the nation that we must step up. This is the United States of America. There's never, ever, 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 ever been a thing we've tried to do. We've done it together, not been able to do it. So President Trump, step up.
And people
May
be
God
getting
bless
caught
America.
with the dogs and rats and all
May
that.
God
You know, it's
protect our
public
troops.
information. I'm not just making this shit up.
And all those folks in the Capitol
I can't leave the chicken.
are trying to preserve order.
So
Thank you, and I'm sorry to
Yeah,
have
but
kept you
when have you seen chicken that looks like that shit? Or beef?
Joe Biden talking.
I've never seen no chicken look like chicken roll. I mean, General Sal's and fucking. I don't believe that it came from no bat or nothing like that. It's a airborne fucking thing that they created to control population. It didn't come from no bat jumping on a fucking possum.
Somebody around and said, yo, let's go get Chinese. I said, dog, no, see, what the fuck is going on the news right now? You know what I'm saying? I was being humorous or whatever, you know, trying to have a sense of humor about this shit, but it's like, yo, I don't want to do that. I don't know what it is. Hold on, reset the room. We got Thea, Samantha, Carla, Charlene, and Friday. Y'all go ahead and introduce yourself, promote yourself. Everybody make sure you follow your moderators. Go ahead and start with Thea, or Leela didn't introduce herself even.
What a nice lady.
Hi, everyone. I'm Thea. My father's congregation is out of town doing something, so sending me to Clubhouse.
Welcome, Samantha.
Hi, everyone. I'm pretty new to Clubhouse. Thank you for bringing me up. I do want to add one thing about what was being said about like the high fructose food and essentially. So I think there is a shared responsibility for us as Black folks, and or African American or anybody who's part of the diaspora. There is a shared responsibility that we do have to eat better, and it is our responsibility. But I also can't help but point to the disparities, right?
That was earlier. That was January the 6th.
I could find something live for you if you want.
I'm showing you highlights. I'm showing you footage, actual footage, not something. This is stuff. I don't know. Clearly, you know this isn't live. I hope.
Come up here if you want to talk about anything. We got you.
But what you don't see commonly in these urban or rural areas where most of us reside is like grocery stores, like fresh food, like some type of farmers market where we can buy healthy food, where we can buy fresh vegetables. So yeah, I think there is a shared responsibility for us as a community that we have to do better. But I also feel like we also need to.
Everybody on the sound of my voice, if you have an anthem, I want you to put it right up there at the top of the stairs, okay? Pay attention, everybody. This government is being taken over by tyrannical dissidents to our Constitution. We're not going to put up with this trash anymore. My name's David Beckley, and I'm sick and tired of this trash. My 9-year-old son is going to grow up in a communist nation if we don't turn this back. We want the resignation of my kids. We want the resignation of Andrew Wilson. We want the resignation of Mr. McConnell. We want the resignation of Chuck Schumer. We want the resignation of all these It will be available to those that wish to take it. And you will never be coerced into taking it by means of exclusion.
Don't recommend.
Proof of vaccination will never be required, ever, for anything, including in school. School districts worldwide, effective immediately, to begin to prepare for full in-school learning. Governments and police are not the enemy.
All right, guys, thanks for joining. Make sure you check out our podcast for tomorrow, later on today with more updates on what's going on. Also, don't forget we have Freestyle Friday that's happening this Friday, January the 8th at 11:30 Eastern. At 11:30 Eastern. So make sure if you want to enter into the Freestyle Friday battle, you go to our YouTube page, subscribe on our Instagram page, 730 Radio. You can find the beat on our YouTube page, the full beat. We're taking submissions up until
6 p.m.
6 p.m. Eastern is when we'll be taking submittals. So,
and if you think you have the best comment tonight, we're giving a giveaway of 730 cable. If you look further in the comments, it'll show you exactly what you get. But you can hit us up on Instagram, either 730 Radio or Airhead 730 Radio, and let us know that you were in the live and you think you had the best comment tonight. We'll go back and verify, and you'll be one of the winners. So we appreciate you for tuning in.
we hope you have a great night. Stay safe, guys.
Taxation is staffed everywhere.